Sonic Adventure 2. Its reputation has become quite the roller coaster over the last decade. What was once a borderline, universally beloved game by both fans and critics alike has become a poorly aged mess, with a bad story and only 1/3 of the game even being considered fun to play anymore. I couldn't disagree with those modern assumptions more. Sonic Adventure 2 was my first video game experience of all time, and throughout the years, all the game has seemed to do is get better. SA2 was the ultimate evolution of 3D Sonic. As the final Sonic game ever released on Sega hardware, it built upon its predecessor to become a more focused and ambitious experience, where every last bit of it was built upon speed and adrenaline. I'm tackling everything this game has to offer, from its fantastic gameplay experience, the over-the-top emotional story, and why the game endures to this very day. Also, hopefully you'll understand exactly why I firmly believe Sonic Adventure 2 is the best 3D Sonic game of all time.
I must destroy all the evil the Professor has created.
First up, let's cover the best Sonic story ever told. I mean in terms of exclusively the games, of course, but Sonic Adventure 2 contains by far one of the best Sonic stories to ever grace the franchise. That's for one major reason. It prioritizes emotion over logic. Now don't get me wrong, everything to an extent in this story makes sense, and we're definitely going to cover a more popular example of a story prioritizing emotion over logic, but for now I want to take a look at a specific example of how this form of storytelling is used in Sonic Adventure 2 for the better. That being, the story is entirely surrounded around the emotion of Shadow the Hedgehog's character arc. From his initial introduction in both Hero and Dark stories, Shadow is presented as a mysterious figure, unlike anything the franchise had ever seen before, and as the game continues, the player unravels more about his personality. I already have a video covering Shadow the Hedgehog's character development not only in Sonic Adventure 2, but also throughout the entirety of the franchise, but to reiterate some of the best character development that Shadow goes through in this game, I have the always wonderful Speed Super Sonic. Take it away, sir.
Shadow the Hedgehog's character development and arc in Sonic Adventure 2 is some of the best material, storytelling, and character development-wise we've ever seen in Sonic the Hedgehog before. Around this era of the Sonic Adventure games, they created these very dynamic characters with pasts and futures, not entirely tied to evil and being an agent of chaos. They're not Zavix or Infinites, they're these complex characters who are just simply misunderstood in some cases or become corrupted by unfortunate means. Shadow compared to Chaos, I think, is the best example of this. He has the most tragic backstory and the biggest misunderstanding. Throughout the hero story, you see glimpses of Shadow. You get to see a bit of his character. He's very mysterious and in the shadows. You don't know too much about him personally. He's kind of just this antagonist. But then once you get to the Dark story, you start to unravel who he really is. The death of his best friend, Maria, was not only a traumatizing experience, but there was a misunderstanding. He thought that she wanted him to destroy the world, get revenge to the awful thing that they just did to her. And that's not really what she wanted. She wanted civilization to grow, become better people, and Shadow actively was working against that. But during the story, Shadow isn't an insane maniac who's going crazy and causing a bunch of destruction. He is still doing bad things. It's nothing good that he's up to. But he's a bit more collected and reserved, almost just fulfilling an order, going by Eggman's plan. It's almost as if he knows what he's doing isn't that right. But the best moment that ever has happened with Shadow the Hedgehog comes in this scene with Amy, surprisingly, begging, pleading for Shadow to help. He possesses this power that nobody else does that could save the world. It sets off a trigger, reminding him of Maria, and what she really wanted. Now, what makes this scene better? Shadow sheds a literal tear. He's depressed because of his actions, what he's been doing, actively working against what his best friend, the person who meant the most to him, wanted him to do. Then, Shadow the Hedgehog becomes the hero he was meant to be, saving the world of destruction because of the Space Colony arc, going on one of the greatest redemption arcs ever, leading to his death, which was with a perfect ending for his character. What Sega was able to do with characters, and specifically Shadow around this time, was beautiful. These Shakespearean tragedies, and then beautiful redemption arcs were amazing to see, and there's no better example than Shadow's.
There's a reason Shadow didn't remain a one-off character. Whether that was a good or bad decision is up to you, but you cannot deny the impact Shadow had on the franchise. Sonic Adventure 1 tried to be more epic in its storytelling, but was overall confined by its very basic individual character arcs that aren't particularly developed all that well. Shadow, on the other hand, is this living embodiment of when Sonic stories didn't just want to be grand epics, but also emotional stories with compelling characters and arcs that had more focus on what they wanted to say. But outside of that arc, however, things do get a little messy with the plot, but not as messy as people would lead you to believe. Why does Eggman have a spaceship in his pyramid when he has a teleporter? Easy. It looks cooler. Plus, is that really a stretch to believe that Eggman would have a rocket ship in the pyramid? He never explains why he has it, but he's a mad scientist. Why are Knuckles and the Master Emerald off of Angel Island? Well, actually, a commenter on one of my videos brought to my attention that the character recaps actually cover a lot of skimmed over info that the game doesn't cover in cutscenes. One of those skimmed over plot points actually happens to be Rouge stole the Master Emerald right off of Angel Island. Knuckles says it himself in his recap, so that's more about it not being in a cutscene that people often see, more so than the story, well, not acknowledging it at all. And it's easy to make a whole list of things that don't make logical sense, or at least skimmed over plot points. Like the Ark not being shut down after Gun invaded, how Gerald Robotnik's death threat was uploaded to the Ark even though seconds later he said it, he was gunned down by a firing squad, and when Gerald reprogrammed Shadow's mind is never explicitly told. These things are just simply, well, skimmed over, or just straight up don't make logical sense. Now, what I'm about to say isn't particularly an excuse. Sonic games should hold themselves to a higher standard of writing, but the point I'm trying to make is, do these nitpicks and inconsistencies affect your enjoyment of the story? It is my firm belief that SA2 has strong enough characters and interactions with a fast-paced plot that never stops to slow down, which compensates for its lack of logic. To better showcase what I'm saying here, let's take a film that does the same thing. A film with countless contradictions and conveniences, but overall relies on its characters and a few select character arcs to carry the convoluted story. And that film is Avengers Endgame. I love Endgame, but it treats itself more like an experience than a film. SA2 takes a similar approach, considering it was Sonic's 10th anniversary after all. Endgame knows it has to succeed at showcasing its characters at their best in a grand hurrah, and Sonic Adventure 2 was the last hurrah on Sega's dying console, the Dreamcast. But what about all the rules it breaks? Loki straight up leaves before being captured in Avengers 1, which affects every single Thor movie afterwards, and the ramifications of that version of the past are entirely unexplained. What about Cap saying "Hail Hydra"? Great moment, but it causes Winter Soldier to make no sense. But I'm sure some of you are saying, come on, those are easy. Cap goes back in time with the gems and fixes everything, yada yada. Well, that's fair enough, but then how about the savior of the Marvel Universe being a rat? Who completely by accident released Ant-Man. Which makes no sense, because Ant-Man could have easily pulled the same growing diss trick he pulled in the first movie. But does anybody care? Does the utterly terrible writing of the existence of this rat detract from the entire film, let alone a small part? No, because the film quickly moves on from it. The pace never lets you dwell on the stupid conveniences of its story, instead focusing on the characters' interactions and development and the awesome moments of spectacle. Now back to SA2. A rat lets Ant-Man out of the quantum realm, a mad scientist has a giant rocket in his secret base. Which sounds more believable. I'm not saying this to degrade Endgame, or say SA2 even has a better story. I'm simply trying to illustrate the similarities both stories share in terms of their priorities for the player, or in Endgame's case, viewer to experience. But back to the Gerald Robotnik messing with Shadow's mind example I mentioned earlier. This is a great twist that is genuinely built up to over the course of the story. This is because, as the flashbacks influenced Shadow's decisions, he was slowly uncovering more of what Maria was truly saying to him. It's exactly why he went and then rescued Rouge on Prison Island. Another more subtle aspect of Shadow's development is, remember how I said that Shadow was explaining to Maria how he wasn't exactly sure why he was created? It shows off that Shadow views himself as the ultimate life form. He's one of a kind. But whenever Sonic actually uses Chaos Control, he's taken by surprise. He goes out of his way to have one last confrontation with him before the final story starts. It really just shows Shadow's subtle development, his subtle changes, him becoming the true hero that he was always meant to be and what Maria would have wanted him to become. And Amy's plea is what finally allows the memory of Maria to stop Gerald's evil programming and Shadow's compassion to shine even brighter than ever before and to clean up his master's mistakes in his final moments, making the ultimate sacrifice to fulfill his promise to Maria. This story is simply nothing but pure unfiltered emotion wrapped in extreme 2001 attitude and awesomeness. But my good friend Eldarin did have one more thing to say about this game's story.
Thanks for passing things my way, because I got one more thing to say. Everyone gets annoyed at people mistaking Shadow for Sonic, but if we actually take a look at Shadow's concept designs, Shadow, or Terios as he was first named, was originally designed as a dark mirror to Sonic, making the plot point make perfect sense. The name Terios comes from the Japanese word terasu, which means to shine on or compare with. And I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to know who he's supposed to be compared to. Unfortunately, they should have adjusted the story for the change, or at least made the mess up a bit more believable, as it really isn't that far of a stretch, even without the context. I mean, how many 3-foot-tall hedgehogs even populate SA2's world? Alright, that's my rant. If you want to learn more about Shadow's development and all the concept art of SA2, check my channel out. Thanks Nick for having me on, and now you can get back to the video.
Oh, wow, that's actually a really great point, and it makes a lot more sense with this design. The plot point definitely should have been changed like you said, but it really makes a lot more sense whenever you look at the concept art. One last aspect of the story I want to talk about is the game's interpretation of these characters. Sonic the Hedgehog is possibly at his best in this game. He's energetic, he's cocky, he's not exactly full of himself, but he's still got that loud mouth of his. He's always trying to do the right thing, as he should. He does everything in his power to keep his friends safe, which is best represented whenever Eggman literally has Amy at gunpoint, and he turns back. He could have stopped the Eclipse Cannon then and there, but he decided to go back and rescue Amy. In what he believed could possibly be his last moments, his last words were, "Amy, Tails, take care of yourselves," and then inspires them, which leads us to Tails. He's far more independent here. He's entirely self-reliant with his own mech, which from a gameplay perspective you may or may not like, but it actually visually represents Tails is kind of on his own doing his own thing, and he's entirely capable of handling himself. Knuckles, however, is kind of shoehorned into the story, but nonetheless, his character is serious, stern, and he's kind of a bubbling buffoon sometimes, which are the three core aspects of Knuckles to me, and I think that his representation as a character here is so fantastic. As for the newcomer, Rouge the Bat. I've already gone in depth on why Shadow works, but Rouge is just so charming. She's sassy, she's confident, she perfectly complements Knuckles, which is why it's probably the most popular ship in the entire series, and she is just a fantastic new character to add to the arsenal of the Sonic the Hedgehog cast. Eggman, he is appropriately mean. This is probably the most villainous his character has ever been in the entirety of the game franchise. He really is just the "I'll make mincemeat out of you" line put fully into character form. Truly, this is the best representation of Eggman as a pure, unfiltered villain. Moving on, however, let's talk about this game's impossibly charming presentation. Personally, I greatly enjoyed this game's presentation, but this is not something I can outright defend, because let's face it, this is a game from 2001 and still not nearly as expressive as it could have been. The motion capture and the cinematic cutscenes in Sonic Adventure 2 is a double-edged sword for me. On the one hand, I think it does actually look pretty good in some of the more energetic wide shots of the characters, where the animators then went in and added loads of facial expression. On the other hand, the number of times models are just left unedited post-motion capture is frequent and leads to lots of, well, flat character expression. But overall, I appreciate how the cutscenes never stop moving due to the motion capture. But overall, considering what the PS2 was doing with cartoonish character animation at the time, I just really hope that SA2 looks like it does because of hardware limitations and not developer laziness. Moving on to the character models, man, I love them. They feel bigger and looser, with more flexibility. I especially love how Sonic and Shadow's eyebrows, I guess? Well, whatever they are, I love how prominent they are here, because it's a lot easier to get real expressions on their faces, and it's so much easier for the audience to read. Amy looks a little not great, I admit, but Eggman looks appropriately proportioned, as well as Knuckles. And Shadow just, wow. Something about him looks so perfectly menacing, yet heroic at the same time. The way he and Sonic and the rest of the cast are constructed, I just really dig the aesthetic, and if Sega does remake these games at some point, I hope they keep some of the rougher look and not overly smooth everything. The 3D character models have kind of sucked for the last long time, honestly, because in modern games, the hands and feet are way too big, to the point where it's not even effective for cartoonish animation. On top of that, the current models' faces are too large and have very little room for expression or exaggeration. Especially what doesn't help is the lack of distinct eyebrows. They have a very hard time emoting. That being said, these models avoid all of those trappings. The hands are large, but not gigantic. The eyes are just the right size, and the facial features for each character are extremely expressive, and it's very easy to read their emotions. There's a reason these versions of the characters are so distinct and remembered so fondly. And that's because of all the praises I've given to these models can be traced back to the slight shift in art style this game takes over its predecessor. Lastly, for presentation, as I said earlier, it built upon the groundwork Adventure 1 laid, and it decided to trim the fat and go all in with its story, graphics, and overall presentation. And one aspect of the presentation is its music. Adventure 1 had a fantastic variety of musical genres, from rock to jazz to whatever this is. But SA2 decides, with its high-octane story, to go specifically with a heavy emphasis on the electric guitar.
Hey mate, sorry to cut you off, but do you mind if I take this section for you?
Not at all. Take it away.
The second version of It Doesn't Matter evolves from its more intense SA1 rendition, which goes into a more upbeat and energetic version of SA2. This showcases the more fully realised version of Sonic's character used in Sonic Adventure 2. Each character's song is more in tune with their personality, and who could ever forget the butt-scratching mechanical genius known as the Eggman? You can't, because this theme song won't leave your head no matter how hard you try. But every character's song is more accurate to their personalities because of the more character-centered writing of the story, and that's why these theme songs for these characters are so timeless in the fanbase.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Every song feels faster with shredding solos and backup synth to tie everything together. Of course, it's impossible to forget the Knuckles raps and Ruza's saxophone mania of stage themes, but those genres are only used in character-specific stages, establishing not only a feel for the characters but also the gameplay. Not to mention, just listen to Live and Learn. It's just a musical masterpiece. Open Your Heart was a solid 10 out of 10, but Live and Learn is an easy 11 out of 10. Its lyrics so expertly showcase the dire circumstances of the situation. It encapsulates Shadow's arc, his feelings of loss, and finding your own place in the world. It even manages to show Sonic's philosophy of living life, all while being the most climactic final boss theme in any modern Sonic game, all without an orchestra. There's a reason Live and Learn isn't just an iconic piece of music from the Sonic franchise. Its lyrical and musical mastery makes it one of the most iconic songs in video game history. Plus, the soap shoes, they just look amazing. I don't think I would have wanted them to stick around, but it does emphasize the uniqueness of the Sonic's design and this art style, and I just love them. So now we get to, without a doubt, the topic that I have the most to speak on. Now, gameplay is without a doubt the thing that makes or breaks a video game. All of the fantastic elements of this game I've been talking about are extremely important, but this is without a doubt the majority of what you're going to be doing whenever you boot this game up. So let's break this section into chunks, shall we? First, the overall structure. Instead of 6 different stories loosely tied together into one even looser narrative, this was a fantastic move. It allows players to go through the entirety of one story, and even if you don't like a particular style, you know that the style that you do like is just beyond the horizon. Although, now would be a good time to talk about those different gameplay styles. First, let's talk about the speed characters. Sonic Adventure took a more miniature sandbox approach with its level environments for Sonic to blaze through and explore, with his, of course, signature spammable spin dash. That being said, however, I cannot deny for a second that the SA2 level design approach has just as many great design advantages, even with its narrower level structure. Sonic Adventure 2 levels are built more like hallways, I suppose, but that's a gross oversimplification used by the community. Instead, it's more that levels are designed to be blazed through, and your exploration comes down to you looking around to find those secret goodies along the path, not so much going off of the path to find them. These levels were definitely built with speed in mind. If you don't believe me, have you ever considered why so many Sonic and Shadow levels are countdowns or mad dashes to get somewhere?
Because this game goes all in on the speed factor. Mind if I elaborate?
Oh, not at all. Go ahead, Matt.
Alright, so here's the rundown, pardon the pun. But essentially, the difference in level design, specifically talking over SA1 and SA2, is that Adventure 1 is more about classic Sonic exploration with more standard platforming, but with the added element of speed. It's more of a 60% speed and 40% platforming ratio. This allows for high levels of spectacle alongside engaging 3D platforming with some light puzzle elements to freshen things up. This is seriously an awesome form of level design, and although it may be more narrow than SA1, it doesn't really take away from the fantastic design within the newly narrowed levels.
Not only have the levels been sped up, but the exploration within levels was made just as fast to perform as going through the main levels themselves. As for control, it's not much different other than SA1 Sonic is probably a little floatier with more airtime when jumping, as well as an overall finer, more precise form of movement, while SA2 feels more realistic, where once you pick up speed, you feel the turn. But overall, the differences in control are quite negligible, and Sonic and Shadow are dreams to control at all times. One thing though is that the spin dash charge has been notably slowed down, but in return, the homing attack was given a slightly larger boost of speed. And let's not forget those grind rails. Easily one of the best gameplay additions to the base modern Sonic formula. The grind rails are excellent practice in momentum and create some excellent jaw-dropping opportunities for platforming. Both Sonic and Shadow, as well as the rest of the characters, have more individual moves, but I'll be talking about those later on in the video. Next up is the mech stages, and here's where things get really heavily subjective. I'm not saying that anything in this video is just fact by any means, this is all my opinion, but I encourage you to have an open mind for what I'm about to say. I've never really been a big fan of mech stages until this last playthrough of the game for recording footage. The best way to play the mech stages is by doing what the Sonic series teaches you to do. Go fast. Now of course, if you're going for high ranks, killing enemies is essential, but luckily, the mechs were built for both going fast and mass destruction. People often complain that all you have to do is mash the shoot button and you win in mech stages. Although there is some truth to that statement, the reason that's the case is because it was a purposefully implemented rapid firing rate. I managed to clock around 4 minutes a level at most in the mech stages. These stages have a more basic, blocky, I guess Mario platforming, which means that they're built perfectly for the larger mech's size. Speeding through a large mass of gun robots and targeting as many as possible before blowing them all to Kingdom Come is honestly more exhilarating than I ever gave it credit for. Now, is it of the same caliber as the speed stages? No, I don't think so. I'd rather have Sonic's excellent free range of motion, and the mechs can be, well, large in stature, which means that they can feel sluggish even though they do go pretty fast. Especially when turning, you feel the weight the most. But with how wide and basic the level design is, it ends up merging together to work far better than the sum of its parts. In going through the spacing I talked about earlier, with how this style of gameplay is spaced in the story, if you try to zoom through these stages with nothing on your mind but total devastation, they can be a fun 5 minutes for sure. Last up for gameplay styles, we have the treasure hunting stages, and well, you all know the problem, it's the radar! Similar to the mech stages, the treasure hunting stages are best enjoyed when going at top speed due to the acrobatic nature of these characters. Knuckles and Rouge, like Sonic and Shadow, are dreams to control, but the environments can range from too spacious to downright claustrophobic. Or at least, that's how it feels. The radar not showing all 3 emeralds is such a pace breaker. It takes what could have potentially been an extremely fun gameplay style and drags it down to anywhere from a 0 out of 10 if your luck is off and the emerald spots suck, all the way up to a 9 out of 10 with expansive levels and well-placed level objectives. But the radar interferes with your perception of the level so much that it can be extremely mediocre and even frustrating when these levels go on for 30 minutes. I have fun in these stages. I love the character's control so much that at worst I'm still enjoying exploring even if I'm not getting anywhere. But good control can only compensate for a horrendous design choice so much. But in the playthrough I recorded for this video, I had great luck in terms of level placement, and completed each level at around 6 minutes or less, and it was honestly fantastically fun. So, in summary, get the radar fix mod in the SA2 mod loader. I didn't for the video because I wanted to actually review the game based on its base product, but if you've already played it or you've never played it before and you want to play it for the first time, just put that one mod in because it really just elevates the gameplay because it actually shows how much fun it really is. In summary, the treasure hunting stages are as fun as the random generated emerald locations allow them to be. Sometimes they can be a really fun 6 to 7 minutes of fun control and finding greatly placed level locations. Other times, it can just be a real pain, and although there is a mod to fix that, that is not an excuse for the base product. Now we return to the upgrades I mentioned in the speed character section of the video. This is something that has been sorely lacking in recent Sonic games. See, one of the many joys of classic Sonic level design is the alternate paths, which Adventure 2 has, but not in the same abundance. So to compensate, it gives Sonic and the cast way more impressive upgrades than Adventure 1. The Lightspeed Dash got a massive improvement. The Bounce Bracelet is one of the best Sonic platforming tools ever, and the rest of the cast gets similarly fantastic upgrades, like the Hover Jet for mechs, adding a whole new risk and reward element to the speed of running through their stages, as well as the basic platforming. But these upgrades aren't just a great addition in isolation, since their practicality in stages is nearly limitless, as they aren't situational in any sense of the word. They can be used anywhere, anytime, all for the sake of playing how you want to play in the stage, and better perform in those stages. Now, of course, the fire roll thing isn't exactly the greatest, but for each fire bracelet, there's an air necklace. And the variety and freedom they give the player to find newer, faster paths is felt upon the start of any veteran player's new save file. But I did mention ranks earlier in the mech stages, as well as, well, getting better and replaying stages with the new upgrades. Well, exactly what does someone have to gain from performing better in stages? Well, I'm glad you asked.
The Sonic Adventure games will always have a special place in my heart. Sure, Sonic Adventure 1 stages are more open and less linear, but the skill ceiling in that game basically just came down to spin dash jumping at the right time, especially with more linear characters like Gamma or Amy. Combine that with the lack of a ranking system, and you get a game that, while fun, doesn't really incentivize you to come back and master. Sonic Adventure 2, on the other hand, that's a different story. This was a Sonic game that introduced the ranking system. Sure, the stages are more linear and the characters don't control as well as in the previous game, but I feel like coming back to master these stages is a real treat. But that doesn't at all mean that first-time players are left out. These stages are incredibly well designed. Just look at Metal Harbor, for instance. You can basically just hold forward throughout that entire stage and do some homing attacks here and there, and lightspeed dash, but you'll get that big fat E rank. Now for players who actually want to go for the ranks and want to improve on the game, that's a different story. To get the A rank in Metal Harbor, you need to kill as many enemies as possible, take as many rings as possible, ride on rails as much as you can to get some cool points, hit the top of the rocket, and make sure to get all of those ring boxes while you skateboard down the section at the end. It's such a well-designed stage, and getting the A rank on these is just absolutely lovely, and I love doing it every single time. While in Gamma stages, you could basically just spam the B button. Here you actually need to rack up as many combos as possible to get the best score, and getting all those Master Emerald pieces in under 5 minutes by cleverly using the hints is always satisfying to pull off. It's pretty impressive how they got this whole ranking system down on basically the first attempt, and while I may very slightly prefer Sonic Adventure 1, I will always have a good time replaying these stages.
And with the classic styles of play out of the way, let's talk about the one single most replayable and both overlooked and also somehow underappreciated aspect of Sonic Adventure 2, the Chao Garden. Look, I get it. I never cared for these guys. I mean, why would I? They're just there, and I swear, if you told me to tell you something about them, I feel like I'd have to have a week just to come up with a comprehensive answer after nights of researching countless wiki articles. But that's the issue. People are way too concerned with getting the crazy character Chao or the almighty chaos Chao, and don't get me wrong, those are cool and all, but you have to keep a healthy life to Chao Garden ratio, and grinding that hard without hacks simply means you won't have a life anymore. So basically, here's the casual way to play the Chao Garden. Just play it for fun. Play your favorite stages, get the Chao key, go to your Chao, and make it as powerful, cute, or demonic as you please. And if you have a question, just Google it. Odds are there's a pretty simple answer as long as you aren't going for like Jesus the Chao over here. But the best part is that your precious little baby here can take to the racetrack and humiliate the competition or get humiliated. But there's a reason people love this mode so much. Every time a Chao falls behind, you get the parental instinct to make it the greatest of all time. Elvis, so help me, you will become the greatest warrior to ever enter the gladiatorial pits. Oh yeah, that's right, your Chao can do more than just race in what is obviously just the Indy 500 x2. It can participate in Chao Karate and battle to the bitter end. Which means all Chaos walk away fine, but these adorable little puffs must be made of marshmallow or something. I mean, just look at them. But what really hammers in the immersion is that you don't directly control your Chao in these games, but instead you cheer them on for bursts of speed during races at the cost of stamina. Or to get them back on their feet whenever they get tired mid-fight. Get back up, Elvis! However, if you do want to go hardcore into the Chao Garden lifestyle, I've got just the guy for you. If anyone's qualified to teach this, it's the guy with Chao on his birth certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, Chao Mix.
Chao Evolution, baby! Hands down, the coolest feature of the Chao Garden is how you're able to influence, evolve, and breed Chao to create countless amounts of combinations. I never realized it as a kid, but this is a really in-depth system. Remember learning about the Punnett squares in school? Well, it's like that, but like way cooler. There are just so many factors that change the way your Chao look and behave. First, the Chao can change alignments depending on the character you raise it as. For example, raise the Chao as Sonic and it'll align towards Hero. Raise it as Shadow and it'll align towards Dark. Or raise it equally with both alignments and it'll be neutral. Then there's the stat influence. Besides the stamina stat, there are 4 main stats in this game: Power, Run, Fly, and Swim. Throughout each of the main stages in the game, you're able to find items like animals and chaos drives that influence certain stats. And depending on which stat you level up the most, the Chao will take on different appearances. As you play, your Chao ages. Once your Chao reaches a certain age, and they're leveled up enough, they'll go into a cocoon and evolve into a stronger form, influenced by all the previous aspects I just mentioned. And even after evolving, you can still influence the appearance of the Chao by continuing to level up its stats. There's a whole reincarnation system too if your Chao reaches the end of its lifespan with high enough stats. And if you do that enough times, you can make this. Trust me, I'm barely doing the evolution system any justice. We're hardly even scratching the tip of the iceberg here. There's just so much to it that I can't get into it all without making this at least an hour-long video. But even so, I think you at least kind of get the point. The Chao Garden wasn't just a little mini-game put in as an afterthought. It really seems like it had just as much thought and care put into it as the actual game.
Anyway, take my advice during your next fresh playthrough or even on an old save file. Give these little guys a shot. You won't regret it. With all that said, the story praised, graphics appreciated, and gameplay adored. A simple fact of the matter is, Sonic Adventure 2 is one of the most influential Sonic games of all time. It's often an expression in the fanbase. If Sonic 2 didn't introduce you to Sonic, then it was likely Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube. It is without a doubt the gate point for countless Sonic fans. It's by far one of the most recognizable Sonic games of all time. And well, it just did a lot for the franchise, and to explain a little more on that topic, ladies and gentlemen, SONICTUBERS.
This game established lore that's referenced to this day in official artwork and comics. It was even strong enough to be expanded on further in Shadow the Hedgehog. Regardless of your thoughts on the execution of adding the new lore, what Sonic Adventure 2 established was strong enough to be expanded on this much in the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. GU1 was the primary form of government artillery throughout the entire franchise. There's certainly a reason people remember this game and why so many people want aspects brought back or fleshed out in future titles.
IGN has infamously given this game glowing review scores, and they haven't gone back to change it. Even their battle version review mainly criticized the fact getting it a second time was the main problem. The fact that Sonic-hating IGN of all people gave this game glowing review scores should really show the quality of this game, even to casuals. But besides that, this game made Shadow so popular he went from being a supposed one-hit wonder to a fan-favorite mainstay along with Rouge. It set the tone for Sonic games through 2006, heck, debatably even 2008 with Sonic Unleashed, making Sonic storytelling about more than just silly fast hedgehogs, but instead, they were written with ambition in mind, written as if these were grand epics, with true impactful character development and something to say. Even if you don't love this style of emotion over plot, you can't deny it's led to countless fan-favorite moments throughout the franchise. Sonic Adventure 2 set the standard going forward for 3D Sonic. There's a reason, to this day, people want Sonic Adventure 3. And it's not for a continuous story, because the original duology doesn't have one, but instead, people want this feeling again. This feeling of an epic story they get to experience, playing as their favorite characters, and watch these characters just be an accurate, fantastic characterization of themselves. Unfortunately, Sonic Team hasn't quite pieced together how to recreate that feeling yet. But here's hoping for the next game, am I right? I don't make this video to complain about recent Sonic games. As a fanbase, we've done it enough. Not to say we shouldn't make our voices heard whenever Sonic Team does mess up, but people like Takashi Iizuka were actually behind this very game. He directed this. He's directed some of the fan-favorite games in the entire series. And what's crazy is there's still room for improvement on this formula. Even with its age, Sonic Adventure 2 remains a series classic for a reason. SA2 remains in the hearts of fans, old and new, and that's just because of how remarkably well put together it is. With a story with the emotional power to make you cry, full of classic character-defining moments and characterizations, presentation with eye-catching visuals and art design able to surpass its age, and gameplay thrilling for any fan of platformers filled with its variety and countless reasons for replayability. It's no wonder Sonic Adventure 2 is still the best 3D Sonic game of all time.